did my presentation on ADD and ADHD, and these are the environmental and cultural factors. So some cultural environment from the media. The media can have a positive effect or a negative effect. So there are some people who will narrate their lives about having ADHD on like Facebook or TikTok. So you can kind of use those as a guide or a reference. That could be a positive effect. The media also provides a source for bullying. Unfortunately, that'd be a negative effect. People can harass each other on Facebook, TikTok, everything else too. Also, the overuse of multiple media platforms can increase ADHD symptoms. Some family support. So you have the accepting versus disciplinary. You have patient or family who will be accepting and help you guide through these challenges in life, or you can have the ones who think that you're just being a misbehaving child and will discipline you. The support would be those who help you get help, medications, work to alter their lifestyle to fit yours. And then the negligence would be the ones who just ignore or don't want anything to have to do with the child because of their symptoms. ADHD and ADD is hereditary, and the family may recognize the signs and symptoms, so that could be helpful too. Education-wise, family can be an education source. Also, family could require education in order to be able to support as well. Got roles of peers. So peers are often influencers, so especially at young ages, they can be be a deciding factor of some of the psychological outcomes in the child's life. Chances of being excluded or ostracized. Sometimes kids who are different will be excluded from things. Chance of developing anxiety and depression due to being excluded. Those are actually higher in kids with ADHD and ADD. Friends can be a support system as well. So if you find those friends who like you for who you are, then they're keepers. Some cyclical nature. So a lot of the social challenges, or a lot of the nature challenges they're going to have is going to be actually their social challenges. They get easily distracted, overwhelmed easily, becoming impatient, waiting in lines is kind of hard. Boredom, so they'll move on from different things. Frustration, easily frustrated. They also check out of conversations, so sometimes someone will be talking to them and they'll just be completely out of it. Some legal and political cultural environment stuff. Laws are in place. Laws are in place that schools have to provide accommodations for learning difficulties. That's for most schools. You can get those resources from the school. There's not an age limit on when a child can be started on medication. Unfortunately, that could be a bad thing. If left untreated, it actually increases the risk for substance abuse and illegal drug use. Sometimes that's also just to help medicate to self-medicating, fix your symptoms. Inattention can cause violation of laws due to oversight. So you may not be paying attention to your environment. You can be distracted by something, get in a car crash, or stuff like that. So kind of important to pay attention to your surroundings. Some potential barriers is actually just the signs and symptoms of ADHD as well. So the inattention, it makes it difficult for school and social situations. Fidgeting, it can be annoying to others, and also you get pretty self-conscious about your movements and people point them out. Impulsivity, you're going to be doing stupid stuff. You can endanger yourself. Also, Amazon is pretty inviting, so financial difficulties there. Disorganization, you lose important items or documents that can really affect your life. Poor time management, so you have the risk of losing employment or even friends for not being punctual. You aren't very good about keeping track of stuff. You get frustrated easily, so you can cause arguments, and also it's a lot of negativity in the life. Some socioeconomic statuses. Some people can't afford treatment depending on where they live or what kind of situations they grew up in. There's also the lack of education in certain areas as well. So people who aren't quite aware of mental illnesses, they're not going to have the education needed in order to point it out. Also, your social economic status can determine if you have a higher risk of depression or suicide. There's also the lack of resources. Some health disparities of race and ethnicity. So whites versus other ethnicities. Whites are more likely to actually be diagnosed correctly. They're more likely to receive treatment. And then some misdiagnosing according to the race. So Asians actually have been misdiagnosed for speech sound disorder, unspecific neurodevelopment disorder, and autism before they are actually diagnosed with ADHD. Most white individuals would be diagnosed with certain anxiety disorders, mostly just generalized anxiety disorder. Religions. Some people with ADHD are less likely to participate in religious activities. A lot of religious activities require for you to sit still, listen, kind of be in prayer, or whatever it is that your religion's into, and sometimes that's really hard for someone with ADHD. They require a lot of focus and discipline, and also some religions can see that mental illness is considered a punishment for not being devoted enough, and that can have a real toll on the mental health of the child or even adult. Religion can sometimes cause worsening psychological symptoms. Some gender. So ADHD and ADD affect both genders, both males and females, but oftentimes women are overlooked because their symptoms aren't as severe as males. They kind of portray more of the attention deficit qualities, kind of like spacing out, being a ditz, not so much as the hyperactive, that's more males. But however, women with untreated ADHD are more likely to have children with ADHD since it is hereditary. Some geographical locations. So depending on where you are in the world, you can have access to resources or the lack of. There are certain educational resources available in America that may not be available in other areas. Sorry, not America, in certain places in our area. Some cultural differences can also make a difference. So you've got some people who want to treat versus who don't really see it as an issue. And then also the different beliefs on mental health. Like I said, some people will see it as a sin. Some people see it as not being devoted enough. Some people don't even acknowledge that mental health is really an illness. Some biases. So some implicit bias, behaviors that are considered to be abnormal for white children will actually be diagnosed. So if a child is being hyperactive or crazy or whatever it is that ADHD kids do, which is could be considered abnormal for that specific race, they'll actually be diagnosed sooner. That same behavior in a child with a different race or ethnicity would be considered normal, and this is kind of a bias that is, I feel like, kind of fading out now, but it was pretty dominant while ADHD became more recognized. Some explicit, so children with ADHD require more attention and effort, resulting in a bias of people not wanting to deal with them. This is pretty common for like classmates and sometimes teachers too. They realize a child needs extra help and they don't really want to have to put in all that effort. Not always, but it can happen. Some international scopes, disparities, and environmental health. Each country has their own medical system and psychological system and the way that they like to raise their kids. So really it depends on where you are, what kind of resources you are available. Treatment and outcomes can vary depending on that country's cultures or even their customs. Some cultures don't believe in mental illness, and it can be banished or cleansed from the child. Again, just not recognizing mental health as something that needs to be addressed and can just be erased from the person. And that's it. These are my references. And that's it.